Hello, everyone. I'm Soundishing. Today, I'm sharing a trending video from TikTok, uploaded by Hate's son, known by netizens as Brother Bracket. The video captures a conversation between him and his 4-year-old son.
我们看，你上次说过你打过战是吧？打过没嘛？
打过。
打过哪儿嘛？
打越南的。
打越南，在哪儿打的呢？
老山前线。
In the video, we see that this little boy has a very unique fascination with soldiers and war. In daily conversations, he often mentions that before he was born, he was a soldier in the Liberation Army and had fought in battles. When asked where he fought, he specifically mentioned the Laoshan front line. What's even more astonishing is that the boy said after he ran out of bullets, he saw a belly, crawled inside, and was eventually born from his mother's womb. This video immediately sparked a heated discussion among netizens. Many claimed that this boy was a reincarnated war hero, and some even tried to research and speculate based on the information he provided. For instance, the boy mentioned fighting on the Laoshan front line, and knowing a woman named Lian, who was called Xiaowan by others. Some netizens found a martyr who matched this description on Renji, who had participated in the Laoshan battle. The resemblance between the two was indeed noticeable. Back then, during the Laoshan battle, martyr Wang Renji had hidden on a cliff in front of the enemy for dozens of days, collected over 700 pieces of intelligence on the enemy, and reported back to the command. But he was eventually discovered by the enemy and died heroically. The woman he loved was indeed named Dayan. For those born in the 60s, the Laoshan battle should be quite familiar. But for those born in the 80s and 90s, they mostly talk about the Sino-Vietnamese War. So, hearing such things from a child's mouth is quite surprising. Of course, some people have raised doubts, suggesting that the boy might have heard stories about the Laoshan battle, and then pieced together his own narrative. Otherwise, how could it be so coincidental? In fact, this boy is not the only child with such experiences that can be found on the internet. Perhaps the most well-known is the son of C-Seed, EV host Song Ying-Gidijal Duba. On May 10, 2018, Song Yingji posted on Weibo, saying that Duba was almost 4 years old. One night before bed, Dubo suddenly said that his hometown was in Sichuan, west of Chengdu, and that he had 2 daughters there and wanted to go back to see them. At the time, Song Yingji started listing place names for Dubo to confirm. When he mentioned Baiqian, Dubo immediately responded and added that he had left his hometown 10 years ago. This shocked Song Yingji because Dubo had never been to or heard of Baiqian and didn't know about the Wenchuan earthquake. This Weibo post quickly sparked widespread discussion online. Many people linked Dubo to victims of the Wenchuan earthquake, thinking that this might be evidence of reincarnation. In the years I've been making videos, I've also done several episodes about reincarnation, even discussing with everyone the possibility of Meng Po's soup being fake. Some cases throughout history seem to suggest that there are indeed loopholes in Meng Po's soup, which might allow some people to retain memories of their past lives. Of course, if you think I'm just imagining things, some scientists have conducted extensive research and uncovered more scientific explanations that add credibility to the concept of reincarnation. For example, Ian Stevenson, the founder of modern reincarnation research in the West, spent 40 years traveling around the world, collecting and organizing over 30 cases of children aged 2 to 7 who remembered past lives. Many details of these cases were carefully verified and validated by research teams. From this, he concluded that children between the ages of 2 and 4 can retain clear memories of their past lives and discuss them with others. But after the age of 7 or 8, these memories gradually fade and disappear. In other words, children under 7 may have memories of past lives. For instance, there is a boy named Cameron Lamb in Glasgow, Scotland. When he first started talking, besides saying mom and dad, the third word he said was bara. At first, his mother thought her son was a genius for being able to say a place name without being taught. But as he grew older, every time he communicated with his family, he would mention this place and often say, I was a boy from Barra Island. I lived there before coming here. Barra Island is over 200 miles away from Glasgow, and his family had never been there. Not even his grandfather. However, Cameron was convinced that his home was there and described a white seaside house in detail. He also said his father's name was Shane Robertson, but he couldn't remember his mother's name. Only that she had black hair and was very beautiful. Cameron's parents were both baffled and perplexed by this, so they sought the help of a psychologist, but found no clear explanation. One day, when Cameron was 6, he suddenly cried and said, I must go to Barra Island. My family misses me. Since he was so insistent, his mother finally decided to take him there. Upon arriving at Barra Island, Cameron was unusually excited. When he saw the White House, he ran towards it quickly, only to find it empty. With tears in his eyes, Cameron walked around the house with his mother. Just as he had described earlier, the house had 3 bathrooms and a view of the sea, which shocked his mother. They also learned that the house did indeed belong to someone in the Robertson family, but no information about Shane Robertson could be found. However, after the trip to Barra Island, Cameron rarely mentioned his past life again. It seemed he had accepted the fact that his home was no longer the seaside house, and that his past life had become history. This incident was not only reported by British newspapers, but the British TV station also made a documentary about it, titled The Boy Who Lived Before. The most vivid memory from Cameron's past life was the happy times spent with his family on Barra Island. But this doesn't mean that all children's past life memories are happy and joyful. Studies have found that children who experienced painful or violent deaths in their past lives are often haunted by their near-death experiences, frequently mentioning details of their death. For example, there is a boy in the United States named Ellie Anderson, who has memories of his past life's death. From the age of 2, Ellie often said strange things. He would suddenly tell his grandfather, "It hurt so much, I died from the pain. I was a bit older when I died in my past life," since he was at an age where children had strong imitative abilities. His family thought he had learned these things from TV, but as he grew older and his language skills improved, he once said, "The car was speeding like a bullet, and then a big truck came, and I was hit and killed." Sally often said these strange things, making his family feel both puzzled and concerned about his mental state, so they took him to see a psychiatrist. During hypnotherapy, the doctor asked Ali, "What's your name?" He replied, "Jamie Brown." The doctor then asked, "How old were you?" Sally answered, "I was not yet 15 when I died." Then the doctor asked him, "How did you die?" Sally mentioned that he was hit and killed by a truck in Tumka, Oklahoma, in 1967. Sally's family was shocked, because his uncle, Jamie Brown, had indeed died in a truck accident on December 12, 1967, at the age of 14. What's puzzling is that Jamie died before Ellie was born, and even after Ellie was born, no one in the family had ever mentioned this uncle. Later, accompanied by his family, Sally visited Jamie's birthplace Tuckett. Although Ellie had never been there before, he was incredibly familiar with the surroundings, even pointing out the hospital where Jamie was born and the school he attended. Next, the group drove to the site of Jamie's accident. As soon as they arrived, The previously cheerful Ellie suddenly burst into tears, refusing to get out of the car, and kept crying out in pain, causing his family to also break down in tears. This incident caused a big stir in the United States, but the truth behind it remains unclear to us here in China. Another past life memory story took place in Syria, where a 3-year-old boy used these memories to help capture the person who had killed him in his past life. This boy lived in a village on the Golan Heights along the Syrian border. One day, he suddenly told the adults, 4 years ago, someone killed me. Can you help me dig up the body? You can imagine that when a 3-year-old child says something like this out of nowhere, the adult's first reaction would naturally be that he was joking. However, the boy then went on to describe in detail how he was killed. He said that after getting into an argument with someone, the other person killed him with an axe. And this experience kept haunting him, causing him to have frequent nightmares that woke him up in terror. The boy's parents also noticed that he would wake up from nightmares every night, and this situation was getting worse. So, they began to suspect that what their son said might not be just made up. In the village where the boy lived, many villagers believed in the existence of reincarnation. So, after discussing it, they decided to investigate the place the boy had mentioned. To their surprise, when they started digging, they actually found a skeleton, and the skull had visible wounds. At this point, then the doctor asked him, "How did you die?" Zelly mentioned that he was hit and killed by a truck in Tunkhaha, Oklahoma, in 1967. Zelly's family was shocked because his uncle, Jamie Brown, had indeed died in a truck accident on December 12, 1967, at the age of 14. What's puzzling is that Jamie died before Zelly was born. And even after Zelly was born, no one in the family had ever mentioned this uncle. Later, accompanied by his family, Zelly visited Jamie's birthplace Tuckent. Although Zelly had never been there before, he was incredibly familiar with the surroundings, even pointing out the hospital where Jamie was born and the school he attended. Next, the group drove to the site of Jamie's accident. As soon as they arrived, the previously cheerful Zelly suddenly burst into tears, refusing to get out of the car, and kept crying out in pain, causing his family to also break down in tears. This incident caused a big stir in the United States, but the truth behind it remains unclear to us here in China. Another past life memory story took place in Syria, where a 3-year-old boy used these memories to help capture the person who had killed him in his past life. This boy lived in a village on the Golan Heights along the Syrian border. One day, he suddenly told the adults, 4 years ago, someone killed me. Can you help me dig up the body? You can imagine that when a 3-year-old child says something like this out of nowhere, the adult's first reaction would naturally be that he was joking. However, the boy then went on to describe in detail how he was killed. He said that after getting into an argument with someone, the other person killed him with an axe, and this experience kept haunting him, causing him to have frequent nightmares that woke him up in terror. The boy's parents also noticed that he would wake up from nightmares every night, and this situation was getting worse. So, they began to suspect that what their son said might not be just made up. In the village where the boy lived, many villagers believed in the existence of reincarnation. So after discussing it, they decided to investigate the place the boy had mentioned. To their surprise, when they started digging, they actually found a skeleton, and the skull had visible wounds. At this point, the boy pointed to the red birthmark on his head and said, "This is the mark left by the killer's attack back then." The scar on the skull matched perfectly with the boy's birthmark. After confirming that he was telling the truth, the boy then demanded to identify the killer on the spot. To everyone's surprise, the villagers followed the boy to his past life's village. When the boy saw a man, he immediately pointed and said, "He's the killer." At first, the man vehemently denied it, and even accused the villagers of believing a child's story. However, when the boy described the details of the murder, the man's face turned pale, his legs went weak, and he collapsed, finally confessing to his crime. A medical doctor, who participated in the process, confirmed that all these details were true, and the Syrian news also reported on this incident. Professor Stevenson's research found that birthmarks and congenital defects, or other physical features, are often reflections of experiences from past lives. He also pointed out that these marks and defects are the most direct and objective evidence in reincarnation cases. In other words, if someone died in a past life due to a knife wound or a gunshot, there might be a birthmark on the corresponding part of their body in this life. For example, the Syrian boy was killed by an axe blow to the head in his past life, so he has a birthmark on the corresponding part of his head in this life. We've previously discussed the reincarnation cases of Tom Jaeyongshin and the Pollock twins, and they also had corresponding marks on their bodies. For instance, Tom Jaeyongshin had an approximately 8 km long scar and a white mark on his left rib area, while his past life, Chen Mingdao, had suffered knife and gunshot wounds in a fight. The birthmarks on the Pollock twins also matched the scars on their past lives' bodies, who had died in a car accident. Of course, besides birthmarks and scars, certain psychological emotions, like inexplicable love or hate, or fear of specific situations or sounds, may also be related to past lives. For example, some children always like to tie a rope around their necks, possibly indicating that they committed suicide by hanging in a past life. Fear of water or fire could mean they drowned or were burned to death in a past life. Additionally, some occupational habits from past lives may also influence the present life. Here's another example of a girl from Sri Lanka named Punima. Since she began speaking at the age of 3, she could clearly describe the process of making incense. However, her family had no connection to the incense-making industry and had never been exposed to such techniques, leaving her parents very puzzled about how she knew these things. In talking with her, Panima's words further confused her parents. She said that in her past life, she was an incense maker named Gindasa, who lived in Kalanya, over 200 kilometers away, and had a brother and sister. The incense they made was very famous in the area. She also mentioned that she was run over by a bus and died, and she even remembered the details of the accident. Punima had a birthmark on her left abdomen, which she said was the mark left by the bus running over her in her past life. Although her parents were confused by her words, they decided to verify the story. So they asked someone to investigate in Kalanya. They found out that there indeed was an incense maker named Gindasa, and his family was well known in Sri Lanka for making incense. Before Punima was born, Gindasa had tragically died in a traffic accident while delivering incense. This confirmed the truth of Panima's word. She was indeed the reincarnation of Gindasa. At the age of 12, Punima met Gindasa's family and recognized all the family members. It's worth noting that Professor Stevenson pointed out that children's past life memories usually begin to fade after the age of 7 or 8. However, Punima was an exception, as she retained her past life memories until she was 12 and could still recognize her past life's family. Some people retain their past life memories even into adulthood, like Tom Jaeyongshin. There are many more stories about reincarnation, but whether these stories are true or not, we cannot say for sure. After all, this is a mystery that even science has not fully unraveled. But what these stories undeniably tell us is that life is continuous. And death is never the end, but rather a new beginning. If your child also has similar memories, as a parent, don't rush to deny or question them. Try to respect and listen to them as much as possible. And tell the children the past is behind us. And what's important is how to live this life well. We'll talk again in the next episode.